I feel terrible that you are experiencing it. Suppose your home marriage and the future of your son once solid, then to see it crumble on the press of a phone button. The betrayal is a twofold sting and makes your world appear too small to accommodate the pain. It is natural that the first wave of emotions seems to be almost surreal. You might feel that you are in some kind of dream that you are unable to get out of, so that your heart feels tight, your legs weak, and this may take up to several minutes, up to several hours, or even days. Your mind is attempting to provide an answer to the question of what and how did this happen. Allow yourself to experience that non-belief. It is an inherent aspect of treatment, not a form of weakness. You had said that your gut was telling you something went wrong, yet your heart was not willing to know it. This is a typical form of protection. Your head avoids any pain in order to protect you until you are prepared. The second thing is to safely discharge that pain. Is there a friend, family member, support group, or a therapist you can speak with? Saying or scribbling the betrayal may also help in relieving the stress that accumulates when you hold it inside. What you might consider next: 4 or 5 hours of rest. Leave the living room, kitchen, bedroom, or any other place that is heavy. You may walk, drink some tea, or even meditate a bit. Set clear boundaries. Until you're willing to talk to your husband, son, or some fiancé, you should only talk about logistics, like schedules or finances, in case you need to talk. There is no need to repair the relationship at this moment. Concentrate on securing your own emotional well-being. Get professional assistance in case you are overwhelmed. With a training in emotional rupture management, a therapist can assist you in untangling grief, anger, and shock, and be able to guide you towards recovering trust in yourself and others. Remember, you are not the only one. Numerous individuals have had to experience the same betrayals. Support systems, internet forums, local chapters, hotlines that are anonymous. You can also remember to tell your story, no matter where you are, and know that other people have lived through this. Attend to your body. Stress may manifest itself in the form of headaches, stomach aches, insomnia. Stick to a schedule, your meal, stretch, and sleep when you can. These otherwise easy self-care measures are surprisingly grounding. You have demonstrated great heroism in providing the account of what has occurred. It is a step forward and not the final step. You are still on course of a story. It will take time to create a new mold and meaning. You can elaborate further, and I can shape my response to the needs of the person you are dealing with by giving more specifics about the issues you are dealing with, including how to deal with anger, how to rebuild your trust, or just how to say to your son. At this point, you should keep in mind that you are not alone with your emotions and feelings, and that your pain is real, and that you have a right to recover at your own speed. Let me back up a little bit and introduce the people in this story, because without knowing who they are, you might not understand how deep this betrayal really cut me. My name's Anna. I'm just your average mom, wife, and woman who spent most of her life putting her family first. I married my husband Michael when I was in my 20s. Back then, he was charming, funny, and made me feel like I was the luckiest woman alive. He had that type of personality that pulled people in, made them trust him, made them believe in him. For years, I thought he was my rock, my partner, the one man I could lean on through anything. We built a home together, raised a son. And for the longest time, I truly believed we were solid. Now, let me talk about Michael a little more, because he's not just the husband in this story, he's the main character in the mess that turned my world upside down. Michael always came across as dependable, the guy who worked hard, paid the bills, and provided for his family. To outsiders, he looked like the perfect dad and husband. He coached Little League when my son was younger, showed up for school events, and always gave off this image of being the stand-up family man. But here's the thing. Sometimes the people who look the most perfect on the outside are hiding the darkest secrets on the inside. Looking back, I realize now there were cracks in his character that I chose to ignore. Then there's my son. David, if there's one person in this whole world I love more than life itself, it's him. He's my pride, my joy, my everything. I raised him to be kind, respectful, hardworking, and I always thought he deserved the best in life. When he introduced me to Emily, his girlfriend at the time, I was honestly happy. Emily seemed sweet, polite, and the type of girl who support him in his dreams. She had this innocent smile, a way of talking that made her sound thoughtful and caring. I remember telling myself, wow, David really found a good one. I was excited to see him settle down, start a family, and build the life he always wanted. Emily now, that's a name I can barely say without my stomach turning. At first, she came across as the dream daughter-in-law. She helped out in the kitchen when she came over. She complimented me on my cooking. She laughed at all my son's corny jokes. She looked like the type of woman who was ready to be a wife, to support my son, and to fit right into our family. My friends would even tell me how lucky I was that my son had found someone like her. If only they knew the truth of what was happening behind closed doors. Emily wasn't just fitting into the family. She was worming her way into places she had no business being. Now picture this dynamic. Michael, my husband, was always this fatherly figure to David's girlfriends. He liked to joke around, give advice, play the role of the wise older man. That's fine when it's innocent, when it's done in good faith. But with Emily it felt different. At first, I thought he was just trying to make her comfortable, like he did with everyone. He'd offer her a drink, ask her about school or work, and always include her in conversations. But then I started noticing his attention lingered a little too long. The laughs they shared seemed a little too personal. The way she looked at him wasn't the way a future daughter-in-law should look at her fiance's father. Let me be clear, I'm not the type of woman who gets jealous over nothing. I trusted my husband, and I trusted my son's choices. But over time, it started to feel like Emily wasn't just focused on David anymore. And Michael, well, he wasn't acting like the husband I thought I knew. You could almost sense this strange energy between them. Like something was bubbling under the surface that I couldn't quite put my finger on. David, bless his heart, was clueless. He was head over heels in love, planning a wedding, thinking about the future. He was working long hours to save up for a house, trying to do the right thing. He didn't see the looks, the whispers, the subtle moments that passed between his father and his fiancée. He had no idea that the two people closest to him were slowly building a bond that would eventually blow his whole life apart. So here we were, me, the mom and wife who thought she had it all together. Michael, the husband who everyone thought was a stand-up guy but who was hiding a side of himself I never knew existed. David, my innocent, hard-working son who just wanted to marry the love of his life. And Emily, the fiancée who pretended to be sweet, but was secretly destroying everything from within. That was the cast of characters in this nightmare I was about to live through, and let me tell you this, when betrayal comes from strangers, it hurts. But when betrayal comes from the people sitting at your dinner table, from the ones you invite into your home, from the ones you love with all your heart, it doesn't just hurt. It changes you. It makes you question everything you ever believed in, and it leaves scars that never really heal. Looking back now, I realized the signs were there all along. At the time, I tried to brush them off, telling myself I was overthinking, but deep down my gut was screaming at me. You ever get that feeling when something just doesn't sit right, but you convince yourself you're imagining things? That was me, day after day, watching little pieces of my life start to look off. It started small, like Emily spending a little too much time around the house even when my son wasn't there. She dropped by early for dinner, claiming she wanted to help out, but instead of being in the kitchen with me, I'd find her sitting in the living room with Michael, laughing like they'd known each other forever. Sometimes I'd walk in and they'd stop talking suddenly, like kids caught doing something they shouldn't. When I'd ask what was so funny, they'd just wave it off with a nothing. Don't worry about it. That might sound harmless, but when it happens over and over again, you start to wonder what exactly is going on. Michael started acting different too. For years, he had the same routine: work, home, dinner, TV, bed. But suddenly he was staying out later, making excuses about extra shifts, or meeting a friend for a drink. He'd come home smelling like cologne. Not the kind he usually wore, but something newer, sharper. When I'd ask him about it, he'd shrug it off and say, "Oh, I just tried a sample at the store." Little things, sure, but too many little things add up. The way he used his phone also changed. Michael used to leave his phone lying around, unlocked, never cared if I picked it up. But out of nowhere, he set a passcode and kept it glued to his pocket like it was a part of him. Emily was the same. She'd be on her phone at family dinners, texting and smiling at the screen. When David asked her who she was talking to, she'd say it was just a friend. But I noticed how her phone would light up at the same time Michael's did. Maybe it was coincidence, but it happened way too often to ignore. Then there were the looks. I can't even explain how unsettling it was to see them glance at each other across the table. It wasn't the normal father-in-law, daughter-in-law type of look. It was something else, like a private joke, like they were in on some secret no one else knew about. I'd catch Michael staring at her when he thought no one was watching, and Emily smile in return. It wasn't the smile of a woman in love with my son. It was something different. Something I didn't want to admit I recognized. I remember one night in particular. David was working late, and Emily came over anyway. She told me she wanted to wait for him at the house. I thought it was strange, but I didn't question it. I went upstairs to fold laundry, and after a while, I realized the house was a little too quiet. I came down the stairs slowly, and there they were, Michael and Emily, sitting way too close on the couch, whispering about something. When they noticed me, they jumped apart like teenagers caught red-handed. Emily laughed nervously and said they were just talking about the wedding plans. Michael looked guilty, but he didn't say a word. I remember standing there, my heart pounding, telling myself, "No, Anna, don't go there. Don't think the worst." But the truth was, the worst had already begun. Another sign was how defensive Michael got whenever Emily's name came up. If I asked an innocent question like, "Hey, why does Emily spend so much time here when David's not around?" he'd snap back with, "What's your problem? She's family now. You're just being paranoid. And you know what? That's the oldest trick in the book. When someone tries to make you feel crazy for noticing the obvious, chances are they're the one hiding something. Emily, on the other hand, started acting more distant with David. She'd cancel dates, say she wasn't feeling well, but then I see her perky and cheerful the very next day around Michael. My son, blinded by love, didn't notice a thing. He thought she was just stressed out about wedding planning. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him, to tell him to open his eyes, but how could I? I didn't have proof yet. All I had were these little red flags piling up, making me sick to my stomach. And here's the thing about suspicious signs. When you don't want to believe them, you'll excuse anything. I told myself maybe Emily just admired Michael as a father figure. Maybe Michael was just being kind, maybe I was misreading everything. But in my heart, I knew. I knew I was standing on the edge of a truth that was going to destroy me. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. The day everything blew up started out like any other normal afternoon. I wasn't expecting anything crazy, just another regular day in my so-called happy family life. But it turned into the day I'll never forget. It was the day I walked right into the truth I had been avoiding for weeks. Michael had been acting off for a while. Like I told you, making excuses about late nights at work. Pretending he was too busy, always brushing me off. Something inside me told me to check on him. Call it gut instinct, call it women's intuition, but that morning I woke up with this heavy feeling in my chest. I couldn't shake it. I decided, you know what? I'm gonna surprise him at work today. Bring him lunch, maybe catch him off guard, see if my suspicions are real. So I packed up some food and drove to his office. When I got there, his car wasn't even in the parking lot. Confused, I went inside anyway, thinking maybe he carpooled or parked somewhere else. His secretary looked at me kind of hesitant and said, "Oh, Michael left early today." That's when my stomach dropped. He didn't tell me anything about leaving early. I smiled like everything was fine, but inside I felt the blood drain from my face. I got back into my car, my mind racing 100 miles an hour. Where could he be? Why didn't he tell me? I started driving home, not even sure what I'd find. And there it was, his car, parked right in our driveway in the middle of the day when he was supposed to be at work. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I pulled in slow, turned off the engine, and just sat there for a second, trying to calm myself down. But something told me not to walk in quietly, not this time. I unlocked the front door, and the house was too quiet. You know that kind of silence that feels wrong? That's what it was. I called out his name, Michael, but no answer. I set the bag of food down on the kitchen counter and started walking upstairs. As I climbed the steps, I heard it. Soft laughter, whispers, the kind of sounds you never want to hear coming from your own bedroom. My body froze on the staircase. I wanted to turn around, run out the door, pretend I didn't hear a thing. But I couldn't. My feet moved on their own, slow, heavy, each step louder than the last in my own head. I got to the top of the stairs, and the voices got clearer. It wasn't just Michael in there. There was a woman's voice. A voice I knew. A voice that made my blood run cold. It was Emily. I pushed the bedroom door open, and in that moment, my entire world shattered. There they were, my husband and my son's fiancée together, tangled up in each other in the bed I shared with him for decades. The room spun. My knees went weak. My throat closed up. It felt like someone had punched me straight in the chest. Emily gasped, scrambling to cover herself, her face pale as a ghost. Michael jumped up, stuttering, trying to explain the unexplainable. "Anna, it's not what it looks like," he said, "but come on. We all know that line." It was exactly what it looked like. My vision blurred with tears and rage all at once. I couldn't even form words at first. I just stood there, my hand gripping the doorknob so tight my knuckles turned white. Finally, I managed to choke out, "How could you? How could you do this to me? How could you do this to your son?" My voice cracked, but the anger underneath was boiling over. Emily was crying, saying, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." Michael kept reaching for me, trying to calm me down, but the more he spoke, the more disgusted I felt. In that instant, everything made sense. The late nights, the weird phone habits, the secret glances, the way they both got defensive when I asked questions. Every suspicious sign I'd ignored was staring me right in the face, and I couldn't deny it anymore. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a fling. This was betrayal on a level I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I backed away from the room, my heart racing, my head spinning. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the walls of my own home were closing in on me. My safe place, my family, my entire world, it all collapsed right there on that bedroom floor. And the worst part? It wasn't just my marriage that was destroyed. It was my son's future too. The girl he loved, the girl he wanted to marry, was in bed with his own father. That kind of betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it destroys lives. And I knew, from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. The moment I walked out of that bedroom, it felt like my entire body shut down. My legs were shaking, my chest was tight, and my vision was blurry from the tears that just wouldn't stop. I felt like I was walking through a fog, like the house I had lived in for years didn't even belong to me anymore. Every wall, every picture frame, every piece of furniture suddenly felt tainted. I couldn't believe that under this very roof, in the home I built with love, the people I trusted most had destroyed everything. Michael followed me down the hall, calling my name, begging me to just talk about it. Talk about it? I wanted to scream. What the hell was there to talk about? I had just caught my husband in bed with my son's fiancée. The images were burned into my brain, and no excuse, no explanation, no apology could erase them. I turned around, and the look on his face, half guilty, half desperate, made me sick. I remember yelling, "Don't touch me! Don't you dare touch me!" He froze, his hands in the air, like he was trying to show me he wasn't a threat. But he was. He was the biggest threat of all, the man who had just shattered my family into pieces. Emily came running out of the room, her eyes red, her face streaked with tears. She kept repeating, I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Her voice was shaking, but it didn't matter. Nothing she said mattered. The damage was already done. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, staring at the wall, replaying everything in my head over and over. Every laugh they shared, every strange look, every late-night excuse, it all clicked into place. I felt so stupid for ignoring the signs, for convincing myself I was just paranoid. I hated myself almost as much as I hated them. But the hardest part wasn't what they did to me. The hardest part was what I knew I had to do next. I had to tell my son. How do you even begin to tell your child that the woman he wanted to marry has been sneaking around with his father? How do you break his heart and crush his trust all in the same breath? I stayed up the entire night, dreading that conversation. My stomach in knots. The next morning, David came home cheerful, holding coffee and talking about wedding plans. I couldn't even look him in the eyes. My throat closed up, and I just started crying. He dropped the coffee on the counter and asked what was wrong. I sat him down, took his hands, and somehow found the strength to tell him the truth. I said, "David, there's something you need to know. It's about Emily. And your father." At first, he laughed like it had to be a joke. Then he saw the look on my face, the tears running down my cheeks, and the laughter stopped. His hands started shaking, his jaw clenched, and he whispered, "What do you mean?" I told him everything. Every sign, every suspicion, every detail of what I saw with my own eyes. The color drained from his face. He sat back in silence, his chest heaving, his entire world collapsing in real time. Then the anger hit him. He stood up, punched the wall so hard his knuckles bled, and yelled, "How could they do this to me? How could he do this to his own son?" I had no answer. I could only hold him while he cried, the same way I held him when he was a little boy. But this was different. This wasn't a scraped knee or a broken toy. This was his heart being ripped out of his chest by the two people who were supposed to love him the most. After that, everything spiraled. Emily tried to call, tried to explain, but David blocked her. He didn't want to hear a word. As for Michael, he kept begging for forgiveness, swearing it was a mistake, swearing it didn't mean anything. But mistakes don't happen over and over again. Mistakes don't sneak around behind your wife's back and your son's back for months. That's not a mistake, that's a choice. And Michael chose betrayal. Our family dinner stopped. The laughter disappeared. Holidays turned into awkward silence, and the house felt colder than ever. I couldn't even sit at the same table as him without feeling disgust crawl up my spine. The trust was gone. The love was gone. The respect was gone. All that was left was this empty shell of a marriage and a son whose heart had been shattered by the two people he should have been able to count on. The aftermath was ugly. David sunk into himself, barely spoke, barely ate. He'd lock himself in his room for hours, trying to process the pain. I tried to be strong for him, but truthfully I was breaking too. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we'd ever recover from this. And deep down, I knew we wouldn't. Some wounds never heal. Some betrayals cut too deep to ever move past. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just end a relationship. It leaves scars on everyone involved. It changes you, hardens you, makes you question everything you thought was real. And for me, for David, for what was once our family, nothing would ever be the same again. When the dust finally settled, when the screaming stopped and the tears dried up, I was left sitting in the silence of my own broken home, staring at the pieces of a life I thought I knew. And that's when the truth hit me, the kind of truth that doesn't just sting, it changes who you are. People think heartbreak comes from strangers, but that's not true. Real heartbreak, the kind that cuts the deepest, always comes from the people sitting closest to you. See, betrayal isn't about the act itself. It's about the trust that gets ripped away. Trust is the foundation of every relationship, marriage, friendship, family, all of it. And once that trust is broken, it doesn't matter how many apologies you hear, or how many times they swear they'll never do it again. You can forgive, maybe, but you can't forget. And once you stop feeling safe with someone, once you realize they're capable of lying straight to your face, that relationship is never the same again. I learned the hard way that loyalty is rare. People will smile at you, hug you, tell you they love you, and still stab you in the back the second you turn around. That's the bitter truth nobody wants to admit. We all want to believe in happy families, forever marriages, and true love that never fades. But life isn't a fairy tale. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect you are the same ones who destroy you. Michael begged for forgiveness, told me he made a mistake, told me he was weak. But weakness doesn't climb into bed with your son's fiancé. Weakness doesn't sneak behind your wife's back month after month. That's not weakness, that's selfishness. That's betrayal. And no matter how many years of history we had, no matter how many memories we shared, that single choice erased it all. That's another truth I had to face. Love doesn't survive betrayal. It just doesn't. As for Emily, she disappeared. She didn't show her face again after that night. But the damage she left behind, that will never disappear. She broke my son's heart in a way no young man should ever have to endure. She destroyed his faith in love and family, in the idea that people mean what they say. And I know it'll take years for him to rebuild that trust, if he ever can. That's the collateral damage of betrayal. It spreads out like wildfire, burning everyone in its path. The bitter truth is this: you can't control what other people do, but you can control how long you let them hurt you. At some point, you have to draw the line. For me, that line was the day I walked in on them. That was the day I said enough. Enough lies. Enough excuses. Enough pretending everything was fine. I realized I'd rather live alone with my dignity than stay tied to someone who thought so little of me, of our family, of our vows. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe you've been through something similar. Maybe you've been lied to, cheated on, betrayed by someone you loved with your whole heart. And if you have, then you already know the truth I'm about to say. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it changes you. It makes you stronger, colder, smarter. It teaches you to stop ignoring the red flags, to stop making excuses for people who don't deserve your kindness. The lesson I took from all this is simple. Don't put anyone so high on a pedestal that you forget they're human, capable of doing the worst things. Don't let love blind you to the truth. And most importantly, don't ever lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who's already thrown you away. Life goes on. The pain doesn't disappear overnight, but with time, you realize that betrayal is just another chapter, not the whole story. You get up, you dust yourself off, and you move forward. You learn to protect your heart, but you also learn to value yourself more than ever. Because at the end of the day, losing someone who didn't respect you isn't really a loss. It's freedom. And here's the harshest truth of all. The people who betrayed you, they have to live with what they did. They might move on, pretend they're fine, act like it never happened. But deep down they know. They know they threw away something real for something cheap. They know they crossed a line they can never uncross. And that guilt? That stain? It follows them forever. So yeah, my life fell apart. My marriage ended. My son's heart was broken. But we survived. We're still here. And if you've been betrayed, you'll survive too. Because betrayal might change who you are, but it doesn't end you. It just shows you the truth about them and about yourself. That's the bitter truth. And sometimes, as much as it hurts, the truth is exactly what we need to finally set ourselves free.